Hey everybody, today we've got a tier ranking, and it's going to be the 2028 Democrats. And this is going to be who I think would be most likely to win a primary as well as a general election. Now, if you get on tier ranker, there's a ton of different candidate lists. This one has a few dozen, it also has the labels, it has most of the major candidates, so I think we're going to use this one. So this is extremely challenging to do because it's just way too early. Over the next few years, a lot of these people are going to fade into obscurity, and probably one or two, or maybe three or four are going to become major players for the election. And this is not really going to be who I like or who I don't like. It's who I think is going to be able to have a high enough profile to compete in a primary and then win in the general. I generally think an anti-establishment candidate would do better. Trump has already shaken it up for the Republicans. I think the Democrats could use the same. There's not too many really outside the box candidates on here, but if there's going to be any biases in here, it's going to be the candidates that I think are going to be more effective on populist economics, as well as far away from identity politics associated with the left as possible. I know that's asking a lot, but that's who I think would be ultimately successful. So we've got tiers A, B, C, D, and F. There's no S tier, there's no Z tier, there's no double S. A is going to be the highest chance of success. I'm not sure if anybody's even going to get in the A tier. D and F are going to be the candidates that I don't think would have a strong chance, or we just don't know enough about them. And that's the other key. Over the next 2 or 3 years, a lot of these Democrats might try to rebrand themselves to position a 2028 run. So if they do that, everything could change. But it's also possible they just shift into anti-Trump mode and become super hardcore establishment Dems. So this is a challenge. You're going to have your own perception of some of these candidates. You're going to emphasize different things and downplay others. It's not supposed to be difficult. Let's try to have a little bit of fun here. We're going to start here. We've got AOC. She's up first. And I'm going to try to not take forever on each candidate. But AOC is somebody that came up as anti-establishment. But over the past few years, I think she's mostly cozied up to the establishment. She's at her best when she talks about popular economic issues, going after the ultra-wealthy and major corporations. As of now, I don't think she would have success in a general election. But if the primary is shaping up to be progressive, she might try to occupy that lane, and then I think she actually could have some success. But depending on how she runs, the establishment might gang up against her, and that would knock her chances down. So I think there are some complexities to her candidacy. She's also very young, and even though I think she's unlikely to win in a general election, depending on the national environment and how Trump does, any one of these candidates technically could win. And considering everything, I'm going to put her in the D tier. Next, Amy Klobuchar, senator from Minnesota. She already ran in 2020, and she even did better than Joe Biden in New Hampshire. But I think she's low on charisma, and I don't think she would actually be that strong in an upcoming Democratic primary. I think she'd be better as a VP pick, so I think Klobuchar is actually pretty low. We're going to throw her next to AOC in D. Next, we've got Governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. Now, Beshear is an interesting pick. He's considered more moderate for a Democrat, and he's the governor of a very red state. His dad is former Governor Steve Beshear, and he might be another good candidate for a VP pick. But unless the primary voters are looking for a really mild, not at all progressive candidate, then I think Beshear is not going to have any kind of a chance getting to a general election. In a general election, I think he could easily win if it was a really anti-Republican type of environment. He comes off as nice, but I also don't really think he would do too much in a primary. Maybe he rebrands himself as a progressive and that gives him a bounce. So it's tough. I think he's actually pretty weak. I'm also going to put him in the D tier, but I could see making a case for putting him up in C. Next, we've got Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut. And as of now, he has no name ID. And if he decides to go in a more anti-establishment direction, I think he would go higher. But for now, I think Murphy is going to be a low factor at best for 28. So we're going to put him actually just into the F tier. Next, we've got Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey. He did run in 2020. And given how crowded that field was, we don't really know how he would do if it was more narrow. But Booker's personality, I think, is actually much more relatable than some of these other candidates. So we'll get somebody started here in the C tier. We'll put Booker in the middle. Next, Dean Phillips. And Phillips to me comes off as just a younger version of Joe Biden, a really establishment Democrat outside of the part where he did actually go after Biden in that primary. So he does get points for that. That'll get his name ID also up a little bit higher. So it depends on how much bad blood there is between him and the establishment going forward. But I'm going to give credit to Phillips for shaking it up at least a little bit. Biden definitely needed a challenger. So he's bland and he's boring, but we're going to put him in the C tier. Next, Elizabeth Warren. She's definitely older at this point. That's going to be a major negative. And I know she has more of a track record with regulations on the banking industry. There is the whole Native American story surrounding her. I don't know how much that matters anymore, but I do think she would have a little bit more success than some of these D-tier candidates. We're going to throw her also in the middle. Next, we've got Newsom. He's a big name on here. He's from a big state. He's got experience. He can speak pretty well. I think he would definitely be competitive in a primary if he ran. And as much as people could easily come up with some reasons why he would not win a general election, because there's a lot of issues you could point out with California, I think he would also be able to better position himself than some of these other candidates. We're going to throw him also in the middle of the pack. Next, we've got Whitmer, governor of Michigan. Her name frequently comes up as a potential candidate. I tend to think that if she actually got out there and mounted a national campaign, her popularity would start to come down. She is from a key swing state, and there's some weird things surrounding Whitmer, such as the kidnapping plot. Plus, she'll be out of office by 28. As I said, I think she's a little bit weaker than other people do, but I think if she actually ran at a primary, she would do a little bit better than I think, so we're going to throw her next to Newsom in C. Next, we've got Jamal Bowman. He does not have any statewide success, so that's going to really lower his profile. Plus, he lost renomination, but he was considered a more progressive member. He also did pull that fire alarm. Maybe that matters very slightly. If the primary is more progressive, I think he would do better. But for now, I think his name ID is just too low, and his track record of success is just not there. We're going to actually throw him next to Chris Murphy on the bottom. Next, we've got Jared Polis, governor of Colorado. Now, Polis has a little bit of a libertarian streak in him, but he's still clearly a Democrat in a blue state. He's also a little quirky, and I don't think he's actually that weak of a candidate. So far, I think he's going to be a little bit better than the rest of these. So let's get somebody up here in the B tier. We're going to throw Polis up there. Next, we've got J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois. Pritzker has a ton of money. He can easily buy his way well into the primary, but he's kind of the Democratic version of Chris Christie. I don't think he's strong on charisma, and his level of wealth is so high that can make him alienating to Democratic primary voters. As I just said, he could buy his way pretty far into this. He's got all kinds of connections. That's why I actually think he would not be that weak of a candidate. We're going to throw him up here next to Whitmer. Next, Jeff Jackson, and he was just elected Attorney General of North Carolina. So I think it's way too early to say what Jackson could do in 28. His name ID is also going to be very low, so we're going to actually put him on the bottom there in F. Next, Joaquin Castro, U.S. Rep from Texas. And I think his profile is just going to be too low. His brother, I think, has a higher profile, so we're going to put Castro here in F. Next, John Fetterman, Senator from Pennsylvania. Fetterman, I think, is an interesting pick. I do think he could be too pro-Israel for a progressive Democratic primary. And I know he's gotten progressives mad on certain issues, but other people view him as very pragmatic and kind of a unique voice in the Senate. I think he's recovering pretty well from his stroke. And like almost everybody on here, I think they have some issues that could be brought up, but I think he has at least a little bit of an anti-establishment vibe to him. Plus, he won statewide in a key battleground state. Putting aside some of the progressives that might not be a fan, I do think Fetterman could pull in at least a small percentage of Republican voters. So I think there's some appeal here. I'm actually going to throw him here up next to Polis in B. Next, Jon Ossoff, Senator from Georgia. I think Ossoff might be a little bit too young, but his name also frequently gets brought up. I think he's going to be someone to take a look at over the next couple of years. First, he's got to win re-election in 26, but for now, I'm going to say he's good enough for the C tier. Next, we've got Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania. Again, I don't know if progressives are going to be really all that into this guy, but maybe he should have been the VP pick for Harris. Either way, he's from a key state. He speaks well. He comes off as a nice guy. I think he could win a primary, and I think he could be competitive in a general election. We're also going to put him next to Fetterman in the B tier. Next, Josh Stein, incoming governor of North Carolina. I think it's going to be way too early here for Josh Stein. He could raise his profile, but for now, I think he's borderline DF. We're going to put him in the F tier. Next, we've got the other Castro brother. It's Julian. His profile is going to be a little bit higher, but not that much. I'm going to actually put him in the D tier. And next, look who it is. It's Kamala Harris. Now, you can make a case that she would be strong in a Democratic primary. She just went through it. She's got all the connections, the infrastructure experience. So depending on how things go, she could make a run and possibly have some success. But obviously, she just took the loss to Trump, and you don't get much worse than that. So I'm going to try to even it out. I'm going to say that's in the D tier. Next, Kathy Hochul, New York governor. I think Hochul's popularity is highly questionable, but I think she's got some establishment connections. She might do something in a primary, but I don't think she'd be that strong in a general election. So there might be enough to put her in the D tier, but the more I think about it, I think she would probably fall flat in a primary. I'm going to throw her in the F. Next, Laura Kelly, governor of Kansas. I'll say she's a little bit above Hochul. We'll put her in D. Next, Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona. He's an astronaut. He's from a swing state. He might have some success in a primary. I think he'd be okay in a general election. That might be enough here just to get him into the middle of the pack next to Ossoff. How about Mary Peltola, outgoing U.S. rep from Alaska? Well, given she just took a loss, that's going to be a big dent on her record. But let's try to speed this up a little bit. We're going to throw her in D. Next, Michael Bennet, senator from Colorado. I'm not sure about Bennet. I think his profile is actually fairly low, and I think he might actually just be too mild of a guy to do a lot of damage. So I'm going to throw him also in the bottom here next to Hochul. How about Mitch Landrieu, former mayor of New Orleans? I haven't kept up with him at all. I'm guessing he might be a little bit too mild for primary voters, and he's also probably just too irrelevant at this point. So we'll say that's enough to throw him also in the bottom. Next, Nina Turner. Now, she's from Ohio, and she's actually a progressive candidate, and I think she would do pretty well on economic issues, and she wouldn't be as alienating on some of these other culture or identity-based issues. But I think she's burned bridges with the establishment, but if she actually did run in a primary, I think her name ID would be kind of low, so I think she would struggle, but I think she can make at least enough of a splash to get into D tier. Next, Pete Buttigieg. The establishment loves this guy. I think he's overrated, but I guess he could be competitive in a primary and a general, so for those reasons, I'm going to throw him in the C tier. Next, Phil Murphy, governor of New Jersey. Murphy came in as a more progressive governor. He almost lost re-election a few years ago, so I think there's something here, but probably not enough for the C. We'll throw him in D. How about Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia? I don't think he would have a ton of success in a primary. He's a nice guy, but I think he's just too mild and he's not a firebrand. And primary voters, I think, are going to be looking to shake things up, but in a general election, I think he'd have a little bit more success. But as I said, in a primary, I don't think there's enough there. I'm going to have to throw him next to Murphy in D. How about Ro Khanna, U.S. rep from California? Khanna is more progressive, so theoretically he stands to do something in a primary, but he hasn't won anything statewide. He could be somebody to take a look at in the future, but for now I think his profile is a little bit too low. We're going to throw him also into the D tier. How about Roy Cooper, outgoing governor of North Carolina? I don't really think Cooper would do much in a primary. He'd be a little bit better in a general, but we're going to put Cooper in the D. How about Ruben Gallego, incoming senator from Arizona? He used to be more progressive. He tried to shake that off when he was running in the general election against Kari Lake, so he could be somebody to take a look at in the future. But for now, I think we got to see what he does, and for that reason, that's not going to be enough to get him into C. We're going to actually put him next to Cooper in D. Next, Tammy Baldwin, senator from Wisconsin, and Baldwin just barely held on to winning re-election. I think she'd do okay in a primary, probably okay in a general election, but I'm also not really feeling enough energy there. I don't think she'd have a ton of success. We're going to throw her in D. Then we've got Tim Walz, and Walz I think would be better than Kamala Harris. It'd be interesting to see how he would do at the top of the ticket. Now he did just take a loss, but you could probably blame most of that on Harris. So I don't think Walz is that weak. I'm going to throw him just into the C tier. And finally, Wes Moore, governor of Maryland. His name also gets brought up a lot. For that reason, we're going to put him in the middle of the pack. Maybe he'd have enough success in a primary, maybe in a general election as well. He doesn't seem like a bad guy. We'll say that's enough for the middle. So that's it. What have we got here? We've got 3 people in the B tier, nobody in A. Polis, Fetterman, and Shapiro, I think are the best candidates on this list. Again, that's who I think could win in a primary as well as a general. You can maybe pull a couple out of the C tier as well. But there was nobody that really jumped out for the A tier. I just think everything is way too unknown at this point. We've got to see what these people do in terms of raising their profiles and how they might position themselves while Trump is in office. That's going to completely determine everything. Most of them are going to go nowhere and have no ambitions for 28, but a handful of them are probably going to rise above the pack, and then we could probably readjust this list down the road. But for now, it's really hard to rank some of these candidates. I think winning statewide is something that helps, and not coming off is super cozy with the establishment. That's another thing that's going to be a plus, and I'm sure you could look into the details of some of their track records and some of their stances on the issues, but those things could change. And also, I think most voters aren't looking to do that much research. A good chunk of it is going to be gut, charisma, and personality. The issues are definitely important, but the national environment is also highly important as well. If it shapes up to be a blue wave and anti-Trump, then these candidates all might just blend together at being who could hate Trump the most. So there's a whole lot here. I think I went a little bit too long on this one, and I know some of the comments are going to criticize some of the tiers I have, but whatever, that's how it goes. You've got your own reasons, and you're going to do your tiers a little bit different. Plus, some of these are highly borderline and up for debate, but it all depends on how you want to look at it, and these are the tiers that I came up with. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about these potential 2028 Democratic candidates? Which do you think would be most likely to have success in a primary and in a general election? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.